A clay tablet sits in the restricted study collection of the British Museum in London. Catalogue number BM-78562. Most visitors walk past it without a second glance. But this 4,300-year-old piece of baked clay contains a description that should not exist in any Bronze Age document. An ocean, not a surface ocean, not any body of water that ordinary observation could detect. A massive volume of water located deep beneath Earth's continental crust, sealed within the planet's mantle at depths that no human technology has ever reached. The Sumerians described this hidden ocean in technical terms, specifying its depth, its volume, its composition, and its boundaries within the planet's internal structure. They identified the geological mechanisms that contained it. They described how it had formed during Earth's early development. And they specified what existed within the ocean itself, including biological populations that the framework documents in detail and that have remained sealed within the deep water environment for longer than the modified human species has existed on the surface. The hidden ocean is not empty. According to the tablet, the deep water environment supports specific forms of life that have developed in complete isolation from surface ecosystems since the planet's early period. The biological populations within the ocean have evolved across timescales that exceed surface biological evolution by orders of magnitude. The organisms operate through metabolic systems adapted to extreme pressure, complete darkness, and the specific chemical composition of the deep water environment. The Sumerians had documented information about these populations that exceeded what they could have observed through ordinary means. The framework preserves the documentation specifically because the Sumerians anticipated that future readers, during periods when geological investigation might approach the depths the ocean occupies, would need to understand what they might encounter. If you want to understand what ancient civilizations actually wrote down about subterranean water reservoirs and the biological populations that exist within them, what was preserved on clay, and what has been buried in academic archives for over a century, hit subscribe right now. This channel covers the documents that mainstream archaeology has decided not to discuss, and BM-78562 is one of the most specific ancient documents I have ever encountered on the subject of a hidden ocean beneath Earth's surface and the life forms that the framework attributes to the deep water environment. The tablet was excavated from the Temple Library at Ur in 1854 by John George Taylor, the British vice consul at Basra, who conducted some of the earliest systematic archaeological work at major Mesopotamian sites. Ur was one of the most important Sumerian cities and the location of an extensive temple library complex. The library held documents covering geological, geographic, and environmental knowledge that the Sumerians had preserved across multiple categories. BM-78562 was cataloged among the deep geology materials, a specific category that addressed the structure of Earth's interior beyond what surface observation could provide. The tablet was shipped to London in 1855 and placed in the British Museum's restricted study collection. It was placed under restriction because its content combined formal geological documentation with claims about subterranean water reservoirs and biological populations that early researchers could not reconcile with the standard understanding of Earth's interior. The tablet's technical precision was difficult to dismiss as obvious mythology, but the specific claims it supported exceeded what mainstream geology was prepared to engage with regarding the planet's deep structure. The tablet was placed in restricted storage. It was not prioritized for translation. In 1982, a British Assyriologist named Dr. Wilfred Lambert at the University of Birmingham completed a working translation of BM-78562 as part of a broader study of Sumerian environmental and geological texts. Lambert specialized in Babylonian and Sumerian literary and religious texts and had spent his career working on the relationship between Mesopotamian textual descriptions of natural phenomena and the underlying physical realities those descriptions addressed. His notes on BM-78562 are preserved in the British Museum archive. He wrote, and I am quoting his archive notes directly, "This tablet preserves a description of what the Sumerians identified as a subterranean ocean located within Earth's deep interior, with specific depth specifications, volume calculations, and references to biological populations existing within the water environment. The text uses technical geological vocabulary applied to features that mainstream scholarship has not recognized as physical realities. The implications fall outside the standard interpretive framework." I have completed the translation but am uncertain about appropriate venues for publication. Lambert did not pursue publication of BM 78562. He continued his distinguished career on Mesopotamian literary and religious texts and produced major contributions to the field that established him as one of the leading specialists of his generation. BM 78562 was not among the texts he chose to publish. His translation has been read by a small number of researchers in the 43 years since, but has not appeared in any peer-reviewed publication. The tablet is in London. The translation is in the museum archive. The implications have not been engaged with by the institutions responsible for the document. The structure of BM 78562 is what most needs to be understood. The tablet is divided into 4 sections. The first section establishes the framework, describing Earth's deep interior structure and the position of the hidden ocean within that structure. The second section provides the specific characteristics of the ocean itself, including depth, volume, composition, and boundaries. The third section describes the biological populations existing within the deep water environment. The fourth section addresses future readers about what they may encounter if geological investigation eventually reaches the depths the ocean occupies. The first section establishes the framework. Earth's deep interior, according to the tablet, is not the uniformly solid structure that ordinary surface observation might suggest. Below the continental crust and the upper mantle, the planet's interior contains specific zones with distinct compositions and properties. The hidden ocean occupies a specific zone within this layered structure, positioned at depths that the tablet describes through reference to surface features that allow approximate calculation against modern depth measurements. The ocean is not a single contiguous body of water. It is distributed across a layer that extends across substantial portions of the planet's interior, with regional variations in depth, concentration, and accessibility. The tablet's description of Earth's internal structure shows remarkable consistency with modern geophysical understanding. The Sumerians had identified the crust, the mantle, and the core as distinct zones within the planet. They had described the boundaries between these zones with sufficient precision that modern researchers can recognize the structures the tablet identifies. The mantle, in particular, is described in detail that aligns with contemporary geophysical models. The hidden ocean, according to the framework, is located within the mantle structure, rather than as a separate layer beneath it, with the water being contained within mineral structures that hold the water under conditions of extreme pressure and temperature. The Sumerian framework for the ocean's location has corresponded to contemporary geological discoveries in striking ways. In 2014, a research team led by Stephen Jacobson at Northwestern University published findings indicating the presence of substantial water reservoirs within Earth's mantle at depths of approximately 410 to 660 kilometers. The water exists within the crystal structure of a mineral called ringwoodite, which can incorporate water molecules into its molecular framework under the specific pressure and temperature conditions that prevail at these depths. The total volume of water that ringwoodite can hold across the mantle transition zone is estimated to potentially exceed the volume of all surface oceans combined. The mainstream interpretation treats these findings as a remarkable discovery of unexpected water content within Earth's interior. The framework on BM 78562 would treat the findings as confirmation of what the Sumerians had documented 4,300 years before the modern detection. The Jacobson team's findings were based on analysis of a single diamond that had been brought to Earth's surface from the mantle transition zone through volcanic activity. The diamond contained microscopic inclusions of ringwoodite that preserved the mineral's hydrated state from the depth at which the diamond had formed. The analysis revealed that the ringwoodite contained approximately 1.5% water by weight, a substantial quantity given the prevalence of ringwoodite within the mantle transition zone. The extrapolation from the single diamond sample to the broader mantle structure produced the estimates of total mantle water content that exceed surface ocean volume. Subsequent research has extended and refined the initial findings. Multiple research teams across different institutions have confirmed the presence of hydrated ringwoodite in mantle samples brought to the surface through volcanic and tectonic processes. Seismic studies of the mantle transition zone have detected anomalies consistent with the presence of water-bearing minerals at the predicted depths. Computational modeling of mantle dynamics has incorporated the water content into models of how Earth's interior behaves over geological timescales. The cumulative body of research provides a robust foundation for the conclusion that substantial water exists within Earth's mantle, even though the total quantity and distribution remain subjects of ongoing investigation. The implications of the mantle water findings extend beyond simply identifying the presence of water in the deep interior. The water content affects the physical properties of mantle minerals, including their melting behavior, their viscosity, and their ability to transmit seismic waves. The water also affects the long-term geological evolution of the planet, with the deep water reservoir functioning as a buffer that exchanges water with surface oceans across timescales that exceed individual geological periods. The framework on BM 78562 would treat this exchange as one of the mechanisms through which the deep ocean has remained connected to surface processes throughout Earth's history, even though the populations within the deep ocean have remained isolated from surface ecosystems. The second section provides the specific characteristics of the hidden ocean. The depth specifications match the modern findings with reasonable precision when accounting for measurement system differences. The Sumerian measurements, when converted to modern units, place the ocean at depths corresponding to approximately 400 to 700 kilometers below Earth's surface. The volume specifications, when calculated through the Sumerian measurement system, produce a total water content that exceeds the surface ocean volume by factors that correspond loosely to the modern estimates for mantle water content. The composition specifications describe water in chemical and physical states that match what modern geophysics predicts for water at the relevant pressure and temperature conditions. If you want to keep going, subscribe now. The next video pushes this further. I am covering the Sumerian tablet that describes the specific biological organisms inhabiting the deep water environment, the relationships between these organisms and the surface ecosystems, and the warnings the Sumerians preserved about what might occur if contact were established between surface civilization and the deep water populations. You will not want to miss it. The boundaries of the hidden ocean are described in terms that distinguish the contained water from both the surrounding mantle structures and the deeper layers of Earth's interior. The upper boundary corresponds to the bottom of the upper mantle, where conditions transition to support the ringwoodite mineral structure that holds the water. The lower boundary corresponds to the top of the lower mantle, where deeper pressure and temperature conditions exceed what ringwoodite can maintain. Between these boundaries, the water exists within the mineral structures rather than as free liquid water in the sense that surface oceans exhibit. The framework describes the water as accessible to specific organisms despite its containment within the mineral structures, with the organisms having adapted to the unusual environment through evolutionary processes operating across geological timescales. The composition of the water within the hidden ocean is described in chemical terms that distinguish it from surface ocean water. The chemical composition includes dissolved minerals at concentrations that exceed surface ocean salinity by substantial factors. The composition includes specific chemical compounds that surface ocean environments do not contain in significant quantities. The composition includes dissolved gases that operate as energy sources for the biological populations adapted to the deep environment. The combination of compositional features produces an aquatic environment that is qualitatively different from any environment that exists on or near Earth's surface. The compositional differences extend to features that affect the biological populations directly. The pH of the deep water differs from surface ocean pH in ways that the framework attributes to the specific chemical equilibria operating at the pressure and temperature conditions of the deep environment. The oxygen content is substantially lower than surface ocean oxygen levels, with the deep populations having developed metabolic systems that do not require the oxygen concentrations that surface aerobic biology depends on. The trace element content includes specific minerals at concentrations that the framework identifies as essential to the biological systems the deep environment supports. The third section describes the biological populations existing within the deep water environment. The framework identifies multiple categories of organisms, with each category adapted to specific aspects of the deep environment. The first category includes microbial populations that operate as the foundation of the deep water ecosystem. The microbes process the dissolved minerals and gases that the deep water contains, producing biological products that support the broader ecosystem. The microbes have evolved through metabolic pathways that surface biology does not employ, with their cellular structures including features specifically adapted to extreme pressure environments. The second category includes larger organisms that depend on the microbial populations as their food source. These organisms range in size from small to substantial, with the largest documented members of the population being described in dimensions that exceed many surface aquatic species. The larger organisms have evolved sensory systems adapted to the complete darkness of the deep environment, with bioluminescence playing a major role in their interactions. They have developed pressure regulation systems that allow them to operate effectively at the extreme pressures their environment requires. They have circulatory and respiratory systems specifically adapted to the chemical composition of the deep water rather than to the surface water environment. The third category, according to the tablet, includes organisms with cognitive capabilities that the framework treats as significant. These organisms have developed problem-solving capacity, communication systems among members of the same species, and what the tablet describes as territorial awareness that suggests cognitive complexity beyond what their physical structure alone would predict. The framework does not describe these organisms as intelligent in the sense that the modified human species is intelligent, but it does treat them as more cognitively complex than surface aquatic species generally are. Their cognitive complexity has developed through evolutionary processes operating across timescales that surface biology has not had access to. The cognitive capabilities of these organisms include features that the framework describes in technical terms. The communication systems operate through chemical signaling that the deep water environment supports more effectively than surface aquatic environments allow, with chemical signals propagating across substantial distances through the dense pressurized water. The problem-solving capacity is demonstrated through behaviors that include navigation across the complex topography of the deep environment, identification of food sources within the chemical complexity of the deep water, and avoidance of conditions that would be hazardous to their specific biological designs. The territorial awareness involves recognition of regions that specific populations have established as their primary operational zones, and respect for similar designations by other populations of the same general type. The framework treats the cognitive capabilities of these organisms as developments that emerged within their isolated environment, rather than as features they shared with surface organisms. The evolutionary timescales involved exceed surface biological evolution by substantial factors, allowing the deep organisms to develop adaptations that surface species have not had time or environmental pressure to produce. The combination of extreme environmental conditions, complete isolation from surface ecosystems, and extended evolutionary timescales has produced biological communities that are genuinely different in kind from anything that surface biology contains. I want to be precise about what this evidence does and does not establish. It does not prove that a hidden ocean exists within Earth's mantle that contains biological populations evolved across geological timescales in complete isolation from surface ecosystems. The standard scientific framework recognizes the presence of water within Earth's mantle through the ringwoodite mineral structure, but does not provide for the existence of biological populations within that environment. The framework on BM 78562 requires acceptance of the broader Anunnaki framework that mainstream archaeology has not engaged with, plus additional acceptance of deep earth biology that contemporary biology has not established. Lambert's translation is unpublished and has not been peer-reviewed. But the tablet exists. The translation exists. The Sumerian description of the ocean's depth and water content corresponds with reasonable precision to the modern findings concerning mantle water content. The detailed framework concerning Earth's internal structure aligns with contemporary geophysical understanding. The convergences are too consistent to be easily dismissed as coincidental, even if the framework's claims concerning deep Earth biology cannot be definitively verified through current methods. The convergence between the tablet's framework and contemporary geological and biological discoveries is striking in specific respects. The Northwestern University findings concerning mantle water content provide direct support for the framework's claim that substantial water exists within Earth's deep interior. The findings have been extended through subsequent research by multiple teams across different research institutions. The total volume of water that mantle minerals can hold is now estimated to potentially exceed surface ocean volume by factors that match the framework's specifications. The mainstream interpretation treats these findings as a significant geological discovery. The framework would treat them as confirmation of long-preserved Sumerian knowledge that mainstream institutions have not recognized. The discovery of microbial life in extreme environments has also expanded across recent decades in ways that approach the framework's predictions. Deep crustal biosphere research has documented microbial populations existing within solid rock at depths of several kilometers beneath continental surfaces. These populations operate through metabolic systems that derive energy from chemical reactions within the rock environment, with no dependence on surface ecosystems or photosynthetic energy sources. The discovery has fundamentally altered scientific understanding of the boundaries of habitable environments on Earth. The framework would suggest that the deep crustal biosphere represents the upper boundary of the deeper deep-water biosphere that exists at the much greater depths of the Mantle transition zone. The deep crustal biosphere research has accelerated substantially across recent decades. The Deep Carbon Observatory project, conducted across multiple international research institutions, has documented microbial communities at depths exceeding 2 kilometers in continental crust. The biomass of these deep biosphere populations is estimated to potentially exceed the total biomass of surface biosphere by significant factors. The organisms include bacteria and archaea, adapted to specific chemical and physical conditions of the deep environment. Their metabolic systems include chemosynthetic pathways that derive energy from oxidation of dissolved minerals, hydrogen produced through radiolysis of water, and methane produced through various subsurface processes. The diversity of these populations exceeds what mainstream biology had predicted before the systematic deep biosphere research established their existence. The hydrothermal vent ecosystems discovered in the late 1970s provided initial demonstrations that biological communities could develop and sustain themselves in environments that surface ecosystems would not be able to support. The communities around deep ocean hydrothermal vents include species that have evolved metabolic systems based on chemical reactions involving sulfur compounds and other materials from the vents, rather than on photosynthesis. The discovery established that the biological universe extends across environments much more diverse than previous understanding had recognized. The framework would treat the hydrothermal vent ecosystems as another upper boundary of the deeper biospheres that exist at greater depths within the planet. The 1977 discovery of the hydrothermal vent ecosystem at the Galapagos Rift was conducted by the deep submersible Alvin during a research expedition led by Robert Ballard and other scientists. The discovery produced fundamental changes in scientific understanding of the boundaries of habitability. Subsequent decades have produced extensive documentation of hydrothermal vent communities across multiple ocean basins, with the communities sharing certain general features while showing substantial regional variation. The communities support large invertebrate populations, including tube worms, clams, mussels, and crustaceans, that derive their nutritional foundation from chemosynthetic bacteria living in symbiotic relationships with the larger organisms. The ecosystem structures provide direct evidence that biological communities can develop and sustain themselves through chemical energy sources rather than solar energy, supporting the framework's broader claims about biological possibility in deep environments. The Lake Vostok subglacial research has provided additional evidence for the framework's general predictions about biological communities in isolated extreme environments. The lake, located beneath approximately 4,000 meters of Antarctic ice, has been isolated from surface ecosystems for approximately 15 million years, according to mainstream estimates. Russian researchers reached the lake's surface through ice core drilling in 2012 and have continued to sample the lake water across subsequent years. The analyses have detected genetic material from organisms that do not match any known surface species, suggesting that the lake's isolated environment has supported biological populations that have evolved in isolation across the millions of years since the lake was sealed beneath the ice. The Lake Vostok findings provide a comparative reference for the framework's predictions concerning the much deeper and more isolated populations within the Mantle Ocean. The fourth section addresses future readers about what they may encounter if geological investigation eventually reaches the depths the ocean occupies. The Sumerians anticipated that future civilizations might develop the technical capabilities to investigate Earth's deep interior beyond what surface observation provides. The framework was preserved with the expectation that such investigation would eventually approach the depths the ocean occupies, with the species developing the technological capacity to access the deep environment through methods the Sumerians did not specify, but that they assumed would emerge as the species' technological capability developed. The contemporary period represents a particularly significant phase for the framework's predictions. Modern geophysical investigation has reached the point of confirming the water content within Earth's mantle that the framework had documented. The next stage of investigation, which would involve actual sampling of deep mantle material or direct observation of the deep environment, remains technically beyond current capability. But the capability gap is decreasing as technology improves. The framework's prediction of eventual access becomes more plausible as the technical preconditions develop. The closing passage of the tablet, in Lambert's translation, addresses contemporary readers directly. The Sumerian scribes wrote, "Those who read this when investigation of Earth's deep interior has reached confirmation of what we have documented should understand that the confirmation is only the first stage. The water content of the deep environment has been documented. The biological populations that exist within the environment have not yet been documented through your methods. The populations exist. They have developed across timescales that exceed your surface biological evolution by orders of magnitude. Their forms will not match what your surface biology has prepared you to expect. Their cognitive capacities will not match what your assumptions about deep environments would predict. When investigation reaches the level of contacting the populations, the contact will require revision of frameworks that have been established without knowledge of what exists within the deep environment. The revision will be necessary. The revision is possible. The populations have not been hostile during the period since they developed. The contact, when it occurs, will require careful preparation to avoid disruption of either the surface civilization or the deep populations that have been preserved through the isolation of their environment. The contact, when it occurs, will require careful preparation to avoid disruption of either the surface civilization or the deep populations. The framing positions the eventual contact between surface and deep populations as a future event that will require both civilizations to navigate the encounter carefully. The framework does not predict imminent contact. It identifies the technical preconditions that would eventually enable contact and the general principles that should guide the encounter when it occurs. The contemporary period is described as the early phase of approach, with mainstream science having confirmed the water content but not yet having developed the technical capability for direct investigation of the deep environment. The institutional response to BM 78562 has been silence. The Mesopotamian geological corpus has been the subject of limited scholarly analysis, with most attention focused on agricultural and surface environmental texts rather than on deep geology materials. The framework on BM 78562 specifically has not been integrated into the standard discussion of Earth's deep interior or the modern findings concerning mantle water content. Lambert's translation has not been published. The tablet sits in London alongside the other Sumerian documents whose implications mainstream science has chosen not to engage with. I am not telling you that a hidden ocean exists within Earth's mantle containing biological populations evolved across geological timescales, with the Sumerians having documented this environment 4,300 years ago and modern geological discoveries now beginning to confirm portions of the framework. I am telling you that a Sumerian tablet, preserved in the format used for formal geological documentation, describes such an environment in specific terms, provides depth and volume specifications that align with modern findings concerning mantle water content, and predicts biological populations within the deep environment that future investigation will eventually be able to verify or refute through direct exploration. The conventional explanations may be correct. The Sumerian framework may be correct, or both may be partially correct. The tablet sits in London. The translation sits in the museum archive. The Northwestern University findings concerning mantle water content remain published and verified through subsequent research. The contemporary geological and biological discoveries continue to expand the recognized boundaries of where water and life can exist within Earth's interior. The framework integrates these discoveries into a coherent account that mainstream analysis has not fully provided. Whether the account is accepted or not, the elements it integrates are real elements with real verifiable existence. That is the story of the Sumerian tablet that describes a hidden ocean beneath Earth and what lives inside it. The ocean is located within Earth's mantle, at depths of approximately 400 to 700 kilometers beneath the surface. The water exists within ringwoodite mineral structures, rather than as free liquid water. The total water content potentially exceeds surface ocean volume. The deep environment supports biological populations evolved across geological timescales in complete isolation from surface ecosystems. The populations include microbial communities, larger organisms adapted to extreme pressure and complete darkness, and organisms with cognitive complexity that the framework treats as significant. Modern geological discoveries have confirmed the water content without yet detecting the biological populations the framework predicts. If you want more, subscribe now. Next week, I am covering the Sumerian tablet that describes the specific cognitive capabilities of the deep water organisms, the communication systems that the framework attributes to them, and the warnings the Sumerians preserved about how contact between surface civilization and the deep populations should be approached when the technical capability for such contact eventually develops. The video is on screen now. Click it.